Hey Trinity, well, we are now in week 6 in our journey of Lent as we continue to prepare ourselves for the celebration of Christ and His resurrection on Easter Sunday. And today, what I want to challenge us to do this week is to put into practice the spiritual discipline of solitude and silence. In his book, Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life, Donald Whitney writes these words. He says that the worship of God does not always require words, sounds, or actions. Sometimes worship consists of a God-focused stillness and hush. And if you're like me, solitude and silence can seem at times like a very impossible thing to get to. Because we live in a world where everyday people, daily tasks, and situations, it just seems to demand all of our attention from the moment that we wake up until the moment that we lay our head down on our pillow at night. And yet, while God does teach us a lot through these things, He also teaches us many, many things in silence and in solitude. And this is probably why Christians throughout the ages have seen silence and solitude as a spiritual discipline. And if I'm just being honest with you today, at times I don't do a very good job at putting into practice this discipline as much as I should and as much as I need to. And I think that for a lot of people, this spiritual discipline is something that we tend not to like very much. That's why we may tend to find ourselves spending more time turning on the TV as soon as we get up just to catch up on the weather and the headlines of the day. Or we jump into the car and immediately we turn on the radio. Or as we go out for a morning walk or for a jog, we pop in the AirPods to listen to music or even to the latest podcast. And though those things can be beneficial for us, it should never, ever keep us from taking the time away that we need just to be alone with God. As Psalm 46:10 reminds us, be still and know that He is God. And I believe that it's in putting into practice this discipline into the rhythm of our busy lives that we learn to do things like stop doing so much, stop producing, stop pleasing people, and to stop entertaining ourselves. And really, to stop doing anything except to just simply be still before God so that we may better hear from Him. You know, we see Jesus model the importance of this discipline even in His own life, where when He began His public ministry, He withdrew for 40 days into the desert wilderness to fast and to pray in solitude and in silence, alone before God as He readied Himself for His ministry. And in Luke chapter 5, verse 16, it says God's Word tells us that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places so He could spend time in prayer. And all throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus seeking out solitude and after performing miracles, in times of grief, before choosing the 12 apostles, and even in His distress in the Garden of Gethsemane. Solitude, silence, getting away from things was a consistent practice in Jesus' life because He knew how important it was to get alone with the Father, away from the many, many distractions of life. And not only for Him, but we read also that He invited His disciples to share times of solitude with Him. Because you see, Jesus knew that intimacy with the Father was how He stayed renewed, how He stayed empowered by the Spirit for His life and for His ministry. And that was true not only for Him, but for His disciples as well. And that's true for us as well. And yet, for so many of us, we really haven't grown accustomed to taking the time that we need to just rest in solitude and silence with God, because in the busyness of our everyday life, we just easily forget how great our need is to just be alone with the only one that can truly sustain us. And so it's my prayer for me as well as for you this week that we would take some time to recognize our need for this discipline. and purposefully set aside some time so that we can just be still in the presence of God. In the book that I mentioned earlier, Donald Whitney continues by saying these words. He says, whether you're introverted or whether you're extroverted, we should all take time to practice intentional silence and solitude in our spiritual walk. Because without silence and solitude, we can be active but shallow. And so this challenge of putting this discipline into practice is not a new one for us, and yet God makes it clear throughout His Word that it is through resting in Him that we'll find our strength. And so the question for us today is, will we put this into practice this week? Will we choose to enter the silence, and will we be open to whatever God may reveal to us during those times, and will we embrace His call to rest in Him? My prayer for us all this week is that during your time of solitude, during your time of getting away and getting alone with God, that God would refresh your soul, sharpen your mind, and grow your affection to live out the mission of the gospel. God bless.